Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of the Bell Cow StoryLab podcast. Uh, I'm Robbie Jung with co-host Michael MacBride, and today we bring you a very special program on scams. And our guest of honor is Victoria Strauss, who writes the blog Writer Beware. And also with us is a panel of authors who have agreed to divulge the fact that they have at least brushed with scams in some form, and hopefully we'll add some color and some questions to this. Victoria is. I'll let you introduce yourself because you're I won't say you're notorious, but you're well known among the writing community. So welcome, Victoria.
Thank you, and I don't mind being notorious. Um, I'm Victoria Strauss. I am co-founder of Writer Beware, which is a publishing industry watchdog group that specializes in tracking and warning about scams that prey on writers. We also cover the publishing industry in general, and I often write about issues that are of general interest to writers, such as contract clauses and developments in the publishing industry. Um, just a word about my voice. I have spasmodic dysphonia, which causes my voice to sound like this. Some days it's worse than others. Today is not a particularly good day, so I hope that everybody can understand me okay. Um, People often ask me if I started Writer Beware because I was scammed. I've been lucky in that I never was. But when I first started getting involved with writing groups online in the late 1990s, I was struck by how many writers had stories about scams they'd encountered, fee charging literary agencies, dishonest editing services, and vanity publishers. And I really had only had pretty good experiences. So this was all new to me. I had no idea that there were so many scams out there. And I became interested in the issue. Around the same time, I joined the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association, and they were looking for somebody to start a portion of their website to warn about scams. So I volunteered. And I was introduced to Anne Crispin, who was at that point SIFWA vice president. And we decided to join forces and create a writing scams committee. So that is how Writer Aware was born. We really thought that if we could warn enough and expose enough, that we'd sort of put ourselves out of business. But here we are, 25 plus years later, and it's worse than ever in terms of the number of scams that are targeting writers.
I'm really grateful that you explained that. I was wondering what the crossover was with the science fiction community there. So thank you. I was wondering what that tie-in was. And thinking about where you started and where you are now, I'm wondering, since the mid to late 90s to today, how has that like research process evolved over the decades, especially now with like AI and all of the sophisticated phishing things that are out there? Like, what has that looked like for you over the last couple decades?
When we first started out, the main scams were fee charging literary agents, editing services that paid kickbacks for referrals, and vanity publishers. I mean, the internet was in its infancy. Most everything, print publishing was the way to go. But over the years, especially as the self-publishing industry has grown, the kind of universe of scams has expanded. Self-published authors are a particular target because they need services that traditionally published authors don't. Cover design, marketing, formatting, things like that to help them put their books on Amazon or wherever. And that need for services has been a real target for scammers, sort of an open door of opportunity for people to take advantage of that need for services. So the scams that we see now mostly target self-publishers, but the new AI scams, where and I'm sure many of you have had experience with this. You get an email out of the blue from somebody who praises your book to the skies and wants to offer you marketing services. And these scams are all driven by AI. And this is kind of a new frontier in the scam universe. And these scams target everybody with a published book. So I've only ever published traditionally, and up until about a year ago, I almost never got solicited by scammers. But now, just in the past year, I'm getting tons of these emails, fake book clubs, fake review communities, marketers who want to sell me stuff. So it kind of the reach of scams is expanding and it's kind of touching every aspect of the publishing industry. And it's also, up until fairly recently, scams were kind of a separate world because they didn't really touch the traditional publishing industry. But now, with impersonation scams so common, where the scammer impersonates HarperCollins or Simon and Schuster, or pretends to be an established literary agent to kind of steer you into paying fees, which of course, the real publishers and agents would never ask you to do. This has really caused the traditional publishing industry to take note of scams in a way that they never have before, because now they're directly affected. So you'll often see on literary agencies' websites, you'll see warnings about impersonation, and every big publisher now has a fraud page. So it's kind of interesting how the scams have sort of spread out to touch everybody.
Are you telling me, Victoria, that all these letters I'm getting praising my book don't mean that people love my books? I mean,
Sorry.
yeah, I thought it was just becoming more and more popular.
And the sheer volume of these solicitations, I think, kind of undercuts the scam aspect, because if you're getting, in 1 week, if you get like 20 emails from somebody who says they absolutely loved your book and it was just so moving and deeply human and blah, 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 after a while it starts to seem inauthentic. So I think a lot of writers, I think I think more writers are spotting these scams now than in the past, where the scams were sort of more cagey in how they approached and more selective. So that's a little bit of a bright spot, but there's just incredible numbers of these AI scams now. It's really awful.
Do you publish a list of these known scams somewhere?
On the Writer Beware blog, there's a list of publishing scams from the Philippines, which is, how do I say this? Most scams now come from overseas, and they sort of fall into three buckets. There are publishing and marketing scams from the Philippines, which mostly target self-published writers, and they want to republish your book, because they claim they can do a better job than whoever you used to publish it the first time. And that's the list that I have on my blog, is a list of those Philippine scams. There are also self-publishing service scams from Pakistan, which mostly target people who are looking to self-publish for the first time. And then there are the AI scams, which mostly trace to Nigeria. And those two types of scams I've written about, but I don't keep a list because I'm one person. I have limited resources. I just don't have the bandwidth. But I do write about the scams on my blog, and I always make an effort to not just expose the scam, but to offer tips and techniques to help people recognize them. So, although there is a list on my blog and it's useful to refer to, it is just a fraction of the scam companies and scam warnings in WriterAware's database. So if you don't see something on the list, that doesn't mean that it's legit. You can always contact me, and I'll search the database and let you know what I think. I'm going to drop my email address into chat.
And we'll be sure in the podcast to also include links to your webpage and the blog and that kind of thing as well. So anybody listening or watching can find that.
Let's go around our panel and have them ask questions or pose situations or make this sort of a organic podcast right now. And I'm going to start with Alan Miller because I think he fell asleep. Oh no, there he is. Hi, Alan. I just
he's right there with you. I mean, I took great offense at saying that we're all older. I'm only 91. I mean,
I was going to give you a bye on that one, Ellen, but
I've actually put all these scammers, and I probably have gotten at least 2 dozen or more in the last 4 months. That all, like you, love my books and etc. Or they say, "I love your book," and then generally I reply to them, "Which book?" And that scares a lot of them off because they don't know which book I'm talking about. And I had one that I actually got into a dialogue with back and forth just to pull her chain or its chain. And I've accused some of them of being AI generated. But I have compiled the list of all of them, which I can share if somebody wants.
Is it possible to put it in the chat, or is that not?
No, I can't put it in the chat.
No.
You can
Okay.
email it to me, and I'll be sure to include it for the group and share it as well.
There are hundreds, if not thousands. And they often just have an email address, which is kind of a throwaway address. It's a fake address on Gmail. And, my theory is that it's a relatively small number of operators who each control hundreds of accounts. So,
Yeah. Michael Pharisee.
Yes.
What-
Well, first of all, I would say I think I'm getting easily 20 to 25 emails every day regarding promotion and stuff. Now, obviously, all of these aren't fake, but a number of them are. And in particular, the AI letter that comes, and I've seen it before, and suddenly it's just a different title, and everything else in the thing is exactly the same. I try and block them if I can. That said, I also have used a number of individuals or sites that help me market my books. Two of them that work very well for me are Written Word Media, and the other one is Authors AXP. And both of those, put me in list building things or just promoting a book 99 cents on the 9th, or a week-long promotion for something else, and they're legit, and I'm happy to work with them and pay them whatever they want. And usually when I get emails from people, there is no price listed. There is a laundry list of all the wonderful things they're going to do for me. And the first thing I do is send a response and request the price. They'll probably send that to me 50% of the time. I usually respond with a no thank you. And then I'll get another letter that says an email that says something along the lines of, I understand where you are. Just want to mention one more thing. And there's something else that will theoretically make me jump for it, and just not interested. And again, some of these individuals are probably legit, but I don't want to take the chance, and I don't want to find out if they're legit or not by spending $100 or $300.
I think one sign that they're not legit is if they claim to be a marketer and you Google them and can find no information. Someone who is a real marketer with a business or who works for a marketing business, you should be able to find them online.
Mhm.
So that lack of web presence is a marker of scam. Additional markers, an additional marker is a Gmail address. Someone with a marketing business is going to have their own website, their own web domain. They probably aren't going to be emailing you from a Gmail address. So those are things to look for.
Excellent. Yeah.
Don't a lot of them claim that they have writers groups of several hundred people, and then just a token contribution, which can be up to $300, and they'll push your book. I've gotten quite a few of those.
Right. I've heard from people who paid, and you're tipping the reviewers are buying them a cup of coffee or something, and it's like $20, but there's a minimum order, like 30 reviews. And I've heard from people who've paid, and there are never any reviews. So that is just a straight up scam.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is I'm getting contacted by uh, readers groups that have a very interesting name. Readers from Germany, UK readers, New York City Readers Book Club, something like that. And then the numbers that they mention, they never say how many readers they have, but everyone who would get my book would love to give me a review. Again, no price mentioned. And oh, by the way, could I send them a printed copy of my book? No.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a little odd why I think I don't know, I've asked for the books. I have never gotten I've never heard of any, intellectual property theft or, the books are going somewhere overseas where they publish them secretly. I've never heard of anything like that, but yeah, I would never suggest that anybody send a PDF or, a hard copy on a request unless they're absolutely sure it's a legitimate request.
Victoria, I should tell you that the reason Mike Faracy gets so many requests is he has written 100 novels.
Wow.
They're all works of genius.
Yeah. And some of them are even more than 3 or 4 pages long.
Yeah.
That's why I have so
Those are
many
the
fan
coloring
people
books.
calling
Yeah.
out to you.
That's amazing.
So, Bill Anderson,
Yes.
tell us, or give us your purview or your questions for Victoria or your experience.
It's been a lot of fun getting some of the stuff I've gotten. I had one guy wanted to turn one of my books into a movie. The only problem was the title he referenced was actually a poem that was published about 20 years ago about a woman who buries her boyfriend in the 13th sand trap. So there isn't even a book there. So that was good. I also love how so many of them reference just read your book, The Psychic Guardian Angel. Well, that's the name of the series. It's now 12 books. So I kind of suspect you haven't read all of those. But going back to the book clubs, I had one that guaranteed it would be no cost to me, but they wanted me to send them $145 to reserve my spot on the schedule. How is that not a cost to me? I didn't understand that one.
I've had some of those too.
Yeah.
Creative math.
Yeah, very. And then I got one from Reese's Book Club. They had a really nice backdrop. It was all just really elaborate, and it was addressed from the leader of the Reese Witherspoon Book Club. And I Googled her, and she showed up on LinkedIn, and it's like, yeah, this is kind of looking really, really real. And then I went to the website, and it's like, Reese features women authors. I don't qualify for that. So I know that they're really not looking for me. It's just so prevalent. It's really staggering. And we're all so anxious to become published authors and to have our stuff out in the world that nice, warm, fuzzy words just suck you right in. It's just so fast. I'm really fortunate that whenever anybody talks money, I say, well, that cuts me out because I'm maintaining my nonprofit status really well.
It's terrible for the book clubs too, because many of them are real, but they're being impersonated by the scammers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah. So
Sometimes they pretend to be authors who,
Yeah.
who want to bring you in. And so I ask them to please send me their volumes that they have written so I can check them out. And that usually ends it right there.
Yeah, I get a lot of reports of that one, John Grisham, Suzanne Collins, all kinds of famous authors. And the goal there is to refer you to a marketer or someone who will edit your manuscript, or in some cases, somebody who's described as a literary agent, but actually wants to charge you a fee. I've gotten a number of those myself. I'm currently emailing back and forth with John Grisham, and John Grisham wants to refer me to his agent. So I'm going to try and follow this scam all the way to the end and then write an expose. But that one is super common.
Where this gets really frustrating to me is I'm trying to find some real marketing help. I definitely can't do it all myself. My publishers even suggested trying to find uh, a marketer, a public relations person that specializes in internet marketing. And all you get are these services that really seem shady. And how do you sort out a real marketing person from a scam? That's the problem I'm facing right now.
You ask for a resume, ask for a CV, ask for a list of clients, and ask for a sample campaign. And a real marketer will be able to provide those, and a scammer probably won't.
Okay, that
does
sounds
that
good.
does that become a bigger problem with AI?
Yeah, everything
It,
is a bigger problem now with AI. I
because
mean,
it would not take long to put together the documents you talked about. Well, by
yeah, but then you can at least do some due diligence.
okay.
Um, Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the worst things about the AI scams is the level of verisimilitude that they can produce. It makes it, before this explosion of AI, I won't say it was easy, but it was relatively straightforward to research and kind of expose a scam. But now with all of the AI stuff, it is much harder, I think.
John Rogers, we haven't heard from you.
A lot of you have mentioned things that I've run into. We've all run into the same things. Um, I got kind of far down the line with a website called Amazon Expert Publishing. And if you go to that website, they have the Amazon slash um, and so on. I didn't get too far down though, because finally I said, you got to tell me what you're going to do and what you're going to charge and so on. And I got the following. This is Jose from Amazon Expert Publishing. As we had a word a moment ago regarding the marketing, that's a capital M and two T's. I have sended you the packages for marketing at my email address. You check it in your email. So that was the end of Amazon Expert Publishing. I started counting after a while. I think I've had 16 calls from a person who speaks the English of the Raj, shall we say, um, asking me saying that I needed marketing services. And of course, for the 15 times, I've said, please turn it off. Um, the other thing has already been mentioned, purchased book reviews. I got a guy named Moses Mark the Book Nook Network, where readers discover authors. And I wrote back after a couple of emails, sounds interesting, except for the $1,000 or so for that voluntary contribution. I'll think about it, though on the face of it, your scheme violates Federal Trade Commission Act 15 USC/45, and Amazon's very touchy about reviews. I didn't get anything back after that. Um, and the third one that also has been mentioned but is evolving is AI generated stuff. I think mid last year, I was getting those requests that would come in and they would be similar. They would be similar and they clearly would have been written off the back of the book or off the Amazon description. They didn't have any more information, and sometimes they used the simple words. I don't know about you, but I am now getting 5 or 6 a week that are different and that have much more in them than what they would have picked off of Amazon. So the only thing I can think is somebody in another country took the ebook and managed to essentially download it and run it through AI and get a generated email. They are much, much more convincing than the other ones. Although a lot of times they give away by sending from an email address that tells you that they're a scam. But those are my 3 current ones, like everybody else. And all I can say is the trend in the AI stuff is better and better and better.
Yeah.
And by better, you
Eddie?
mean worse, much worse.
Worse and worse and worse. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know if they ingest entire books, but they do scrape the internet and they pick up reviews, they pick up interviews, anything relating to you. I just heard from a colleague who got one of these emails, and it was sent to every single email address that they had ever had, including ones they had like 20 years ago from services that are defunct.
Oh,
So there's clearly some way that they're data mining, deeply scouring the internet. I don't know enough about it to know exactly what, but yeah, it's definitely happening. Um, Let me say a word about all of the Amazon imitators. There are a lot of them. You mentioned Amazon experts, was it? Um,
uh, Amazon Expert Publishing. Yes, very nice
right,
site.
right. This is part of a group of scams that pose as publishing and marketing service providers. And there's a subset of them that use the Amazon name and various Amazon trademarks like KDP Publishing Prime. The list, there's just a huge list. Um, and they often claim to be affiliated with Amazon or to be an Amazon partner. And if you look at some of them, there is a little disclaimer at the bottom that contradicts that claim. We are not affiliated because Amazon has sued a number of them and taken them offline and seized their domains. But the clue is that KDP is free, as is Ingram Spark. And any demand for money by any service, claiming to be affiliated with Amazon or Ingram Spark, because there are Ingram Spark imitators out there too. The money ask is the scam marker, but there are hundreds of them. I get so many questions. And I hear from so many authors who've been drawn in, who've lost, tens of thousands of dollars. And worst of all, have had their books published under the names of these companies, which now control their books.
Mm.
And they have no way to get them back because these companies are based overseas. They operate in the United States with impunity, and there's no way to get in touch with them or to pursue them, even legally. It's really, really expensive. So you can lose a lot more than money. And I hear from quite a number of authors who've, lost control of their books and websites as a result of getting scammed by these
Oh.
companies.
Betty, we haven't heard from you yet.
I'm wondering what you know about a company in the UK called Reader's House Publishing.
Say again?
Reader's House Publishing in the UK.
Yes. I've written a blog post about them. Actually, that's the interview, the free interview, right?
Well, yeah, free, I guess, costing $200. But they guarantee that you'll get an interview. They basically that means they'll send you interview questions and they publish exactly what your responses are to their questions. In my communication, they promised me a front cover of a magazine, a position on the front cover. They promised me a plaque. And they ultimately gave me an award for my book that just said glowing things about it. So I talked with some of the people on this panel about this company, about whether they were a fraud or not. Admittedly, they market authors or readers, actually. And they want authors to be able to show that you've been written up in a glossy magazine, a nice article, a nice spread on you, which makes you look very professional and an author of some substance. And so I paid them $200. I never got a plaque, didn't get a front cover page about me, but I did get two very glossy, very nice professional looking magazines. I could have purchased more for $30 a piece, I think. But with the $200, I got two magazines. I inquired if they would provide me with a list of bookstores or wherever that their magazines are actually sold on the shelf. It's a digital magazine and they make it available. They sent me a long list of places that they market this magazine to. I never followed up with whether or not any of those stores, brick and mortar stores, had ever purchased their magazine. And because it's very spendy when you publish a glossy magazine, it was $32. Who goes out and buys a $32 magazine to read about authors? So I still, to this day, don't know if I was scammed, how I was scammed, because I did get something out of it. I don't know that this magazine, because it says that they would send it to 90 countries. They make it available to stores in 90 countries. So I don't know probably I was scammed. I just don't know how badly I was scammed.
I have gotten a number of questions about Reader's House. And I researched it and wrote a blog post. I just put a link to my post in chat.
Okay.
What it is, the interview. Now, I haven't heard from anyone who was asked to pay for the interview. Everybody I heard from was told that the interview was free, and indeed it was. But then they were sort of pressured to buy the magazine at this ridiculous $30 price, or to buy marketing services. So it turns out that Reader's House is just one of a whole suite of similar magazines that also charge fees to authors, in various ways. So this is a company that, just has this whole stable of magazines and is making money from soliciting authors to participate in these interviews, and it presents a very professional experience. So it's really hard to tag it as not legit. It's especially effective as a technique to sort of lead writers into paying fees that they really shouldn't have to pay. So, as I said, I've heard from a number of people who've had encounters with this magazine, and I think it is a scam, but it's a very kind of roundabout one. And the scam, I think, lies more in the fact that there are 10 or 20 magazines that are doing the exact same thing, and the person who owns them is making money from all of them. So, if you're interested, you can see my blog post and
We'll look at it. Thank you.
take a look at, how it all breaks down. But yeah, I'm sorry you had that experience.
Have
So
any
more of a scam that it overpromises and overcharges for what they actually deliver in that way. I mean, I imagine there's a whole spectrum of scams and frauds, right? Like some actually do something for your money, others just take your money and disappear. And so this is kind of a gray area. It sounds like you're describing it, where predatory, yes, but actually produces something with the time and money.
Yeah, you get there are a number of, it is a gray area, and there are a number of exploitive schemes where you get something for your money. There are a lot of contests and awards, for example, that make money from charging high entry fees. But writers who enter, they do get some kind of benefit if they win. So is it a scam? Yeah, kind of. But is it fraudulent? No, it's not illegal what they're doing. It's just predatory. The world of scams, it runs the gamut from the people who will take your money and run, which is obvious fraud, or misrepresent who they are, which is also fraud, all the way to just companies and individuals who are predatory and provide something for the money, but are still taking advantage of the people that they deal with, and not always being honest about benefits or even who they are. So, yeah, the Reader's House is a good example. I wouldn't say that it was a fraud, but it's definitely predatory.
They really wanted me to buy 10 to 20 more magazines at a discounted price. I got a lot of pressure for that. I figured if I invested in a magazine that did a spread on me, that I could have in my hands and put at my next book signing that said a magazine did to me, in exchange for $200, I got something out of it. I got something in my hands that I could use as a marketing tool. Yeah, maybe they were scamming me to a certain degree, but um, I don't know. Rob, you were one of the people I talked to about Reader's House when I was going through this.
Yep.
Um, I think we both agreed that there was a gray area there, and
Yeah.
I still they gave me an Excellence in Literary Award. I still put that on my books.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, would the police arrest these people? No, nothing that they're doing is illegal. Um, did they oversell the benefits and overcharge you? Yeah, yeah, they did.
Yeah.
So, like you say,
Yeah.
it is a gray area. And
Yeah.
did you ever get the magazines?
Yeah, yes, they're lovely.
Yeah.
They're just excellent. They're very professional.
So you have
I
something.
I did get something out of it, and it cost me $200. Well, to me, that's not that's part of doing business. Is if I wanted to spread like that. I don't know. So I'm inexperienced about magazines. Would they, if they wanted to do an interview of you and your book or books you've written, would they charge you?
No.
They never would.
No reputable magazine would ever charge you a fee for an interview.
Okay.
Um, that's a marker, could be a marker for an outright scam, could be a marker for something that's predatory and dishonest. But either way, it's not standard practice.
Okay. And most of us
And
don't know these rules. Most of us
This
don't know
this
that.
It's
Yeah.
this is also true of radio and TV interviews. There is a thriving culture or ecosystem of TV and radio hosts who charge large fees for interviews. And if you do get an interview, but it's not really, it's usually on some online channel that doesn't get much of a viewership, or else these hosts allow their services to be sold by scammers at a large markup. So I don't know, some of you may have gotten emails offering you interviews with Logan Crawford or Kate Delaney or Rick Bratton.
yep.
These are all pay to play interviews. Again, it can be a gray area if you actually get an interview. But the thing to remember is that reputable TV shows and interview hosts do not charge fees to their guests.
Okay.
You know what I've used
Alan,
twice? Uh, I tell these people that I get an honorarium of at least $100 when I speak to a group, and therefore, if they send me the money, I'll be happy to pursue it further. And of
Mhm.
course, it dies right there.
Yeah, I'll bet.
it's always if you can get them to pay in advance.
It's always good.
If that works for anybody, let me know right away,
Yeah.
please. Let Victoria know right away, please. Victoria, I have a question
Okay.
that you that comes from something you said earlier. You said now with AI, the publishing industry, not independent publishing, not self-publishers, but the publishing industry is now being impacted by scams, at least in a far greater volume than they had been in the past. So my question becomes, since now the scammers have the attention of the big five, do you think that there will be some sort of concerted activity by the publishing industry to root out scams, to penalize them, to do something to try to make this a little less of a minefield.
No, unfortunately. Now, there are people, there are groups that are paying attention. The Authors Guild, for example, has put out a lot of scam warnings and has offered help to writers who've been scammed by publishers. But for the publishing industry in general and literary agents also who are being impacted, I think it's more of a nuisance than a threat. It's enough of a nuisance that, they've been motivated to put warnings on their websites and to become scam aware so that they can advise writers who call them to ask questions. But in terms of an actual impact on the industry, it's more of a nuisance than anything else. So I don't think it's enough of a threat to, to result in any kind of organized action like you mentioned. Additionally, I think publishing is dealing with such enormous issues right now. The threat of AI copyright theft with the companies that are training on copyrighted works,
Yep.
the integration of AI into publishing, which is a really fraught area. The decline in readership, all of these enormous issues that are affecting not just publishers in their selection and publishing function, but their income. I think, these huge issues that are taking up so much time and attention, I think writing scams, by comparison, are sort of a mosquito as compared to a grizzly bear. So it's good. I think that the publishing industry is taking notice because it never really did before. So who knows, somewhere down the road, maybe, but not now.
I'm kind of curious. I know authors, as one myself, we enjoy being validated and read and appreciated and that kind of thing. I wonder, like, do you think we are more vulnerable to scams and fraud than other groups of people out there?
I actually wrote an essay about this not too long ago. I think all people in creative industries are vulnerable in a similar way. The struggle for exposure, the the difficulty of trying to make it in any creative field. It's really bruising struggle. Especially where the entryway is narrow and not a lot of people get through. So I think that anyone in a creative industry is vulnerable to something that kind of plays on their ego and their desire for recognition and validation. So I don't think writers are uniquely vulnerable. And then, people are vulnerable to financial scams, which use similar techniques of, sparking fear and appealing to ego. So, but there are more writing scams, I think, than scams in any other creative field. And I think that's just a function of the fact that there are so many more writers. If you want to make it as a musician, you need proficiency in an instrument, which is difficult to achieve. but anybody can sit down and write a book. So the bar to actually practicing the creative endeavor is much lower for writers. So there are a lot more people who do sit down and write a book or try their hand at short stories or a screenplay. And I think there are just so many. And that's why there are so many writing scams. It's a crime of opportunity.
Anybody have any of the panel have any other more questions or thoughts or comments?
I have one, and this has really helped me over the years. When I put out a book, I'll hear from people that say, "I really enjoyed your book. Da, 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 da. I really like this series." That's one group. The second group is people who say, "I really like your books, but I'm on a limited income and I can't afford or whatever." What I have done in both instances is send them an email that says, "Thank you. I will put you on my readers list. And on the day of my book being released, I will send you a copy of it. What I ask is, if you enjoyed the read, please consider leaving a review." I have a list of just about 100 names now, a little more than that. By the way, sending out the book, an ebook via Amazon takes an entire 24 hours because you can only send about 10 books out, and then Amazon pauses you for the better part of an hour. So on my release days, which is always a Sunday, I set my alarm for 4 o'clock in the morning and start sending out 10 books at a time, an hour apiece. The flip side of that is I have usually 100 five-star reviews within 2 or 2.5 weeks on all my new releases. That really makes a difference.
Amazing that you get that high a percentage.
Well, yeah, although I've got similar series and it's people that are into my series. Now, along with that, probably 15 to 20 of those reviews are people who did not receive my book for free from me.
Right.
So, I'm always groveling in some way, shape, or form.
Consider book funnel.
I've tried that, and it probably more on me than anything else. I didn't like it.
Okay.
I found it difficult to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Victoria, if you were asked for 3 or 5 rules you would use to most frequently vet what you might suspect is a scam, what would they be?
That is okay. Fees where fees are not standard. Fees for interviews, fees to publish, fees for agency representation. Anytime you're asked to pay in a situation where the standard is not to pay, that is usually a marker for a scam. I would say one of the most important things for writers is to be informed. I hear from a lot of writers who have written a book and just kind of jump into publishing or self-publishing without really knowing anything about the field. Before you get involved with publishing, it takes some time to learn about it. And the more you know about how things should work, the better equipped you'll be to recognize a scam when you encounter one. Be aware that scams exist. Many writers don't know that yet, so they don't know, for example, that somebody who solicits them out of the blue with publishing offer is probably not going to be legitimate. So it's important to know that scams are out there. You know, always research before you submit if you're looking for a traditional publisher or agent, or before you buy if you're working with a service provider, an editor, or a self-publishing service company. Always research, ask for references, don't take claims at face value. And watch out for out of the blue solicitations. Most reputable companies and individuals do not get business by phoning or emailing you out of the blue. Whereas for scammers these days, it's their main way of acquiring clients. So any solicitation for publishing, marketing, literary agent representation, whatever it is, always check before you respond to determine if it's legitimate. And again, you can always email me and I might have something in my files, or I can take a look at the website. And I've seen so many scam websites that I can usually identify just by the way they're formatted and organized, whether it's a scam or not.
Have you had any experience, or is there value to a service like, for example, Reedsy, which has a lot of people on it that claim to be various things? It's
Oh, Reedsy.
and so I don't know. I don't really know whether they do any sort of vetting before they let people on.
They do. It's not super comprehensive, so you always need to do your own research.
Okay.
But Reedsy is, it's a decent marketplace for publishing service providers. The challenge always, and it's hard to know just by looking at a website. There are
Yeah.
other websites that purport to do what Reedsy does, and they're not legit. It's all advertising. It's paid advertising for services and publishing companies. So it can be really difficult to tell the difference. But Reedsy is a pretty decent marketplace for finding service providers.
Okay. Take you.
Anybody else has a question or anything else? We've been going for about an hour here, and Michael, you got anything to add? Or
I mean,
any
I was going to say
questions?
my very favorite approach was in February, which in Minnesota is a tough time of the year because you really want to get over the hump of winter, and you still have 2 months to go. Being reached out by a book festival in Fiji, which sounded very attractive. Not just because of its exotic location, but also the timing that it came in. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I think a lot of those tips are important to remember, that if it's unsolicited and it is so out of the blue, or seems too good to be true, then it probably is. That old adage exists for a reason, I suppose. So, but thank you. It's been very interesting hearing your thoughts and everybody's stories, and it's wonderful to know that this resource exists out there. Thank you for doing it.
So, Victoria, I have a question specifically whether you have yet received an inquiry about Bell Cow Productions.
No, I never have.
Okay. Well, hopefully you never will. But it was interesting because when Michael and I started Bell Cow about, oh, I don't know, year and a half ago, one of the things that we suddenly quickly realized was how do you communicate with people that you don't, I mean, we know all these people, but how do you communicate with people to offer a legitimate service without having it just, basically deleted because there's such a prevalence of scams right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really is that's a problem that we face almost on a daily basis. We put out a catalog that we distribute to all the libraries in Minnesota and peripheral cities and all the independent bookstores in Minnesota, a digital catalog, and we're planning on expanding to Wisconsin, next year. And so how do you communicate in a fashion that people don't automatically just delete, which is what I would probably do if somebody sent me an email out of the blue saying, "Hey, here's an opportunity to get your book seen in all the libraries of Wisconsin."
Yeah,
So,
you just have to research. It's but yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's another way that the prevalence of scams has ruined things for everybody. And I do, when I talk with publishers, especially small presses, they all have some version of this issue. How do we prove our legitimacy in a world where, scams present as small presses or as agents or whatever? It's tough. It's
yeah,
very tough.
it is indeed. Um, I want to thank our panel for sitting in today and providing us with your experiences. I urge all of those watching and listening to this podcast to note these panelists' names and to buy their books. They are not scams. They are all great writers. Um, I would also like to specifically thank you, Victoria, for taking the time to be with us and to explaining what writer beware is and does, what you do. And I think, Michael, there will be uh, URL or some link to Writers Beware added to this podcast. So thanks everybody. I appreciate it, and Michael, I know you appreciate it, and keep on keeping on. Just beware.
Thank
Yes.
you so much for having me.